Hello, this is Hannah Fairbairn, and here's a video introducing a short series about my book, When You Can't Believe Your Eyes, Vision Loss and Personal Recovery. It's a book written for people losing vision and for their families and close friends. And the book does have 3 accessible versions. I wanted to do some videos just in case you want to get the overall idea of what the book is about and why I wrote it. So here goes. This video is really telling you why I wrote the book. So first of all, a little bit about my background. I was born in the UK at a time when there was no such term as low vision, though the idea of partial sight had begun, and I was born with congenital cataracts, so I did have partial sight. And there were no accommodations in school. So I did all right when the print was large and the classes were small, and then I didn't do so well later on. So I ended up as a chef, which actually was terrific because I learned to work hard. I became a partner in a little London restaurant and got written up in a few places. And it was altogether a very good experience. Plus the fun of producing very good food. I apologize for the plane. So I was being a chef and always going well. And then when I was 33, overnight, the retina in my good eye detached and I became legally blind very suddenly. And of course it was a terrific shock. So everything changed about my life at that point, and I could no longer do my job, and at that point I couldn't afford to live on in my little condo and so on. So luckily the only thing that didn't change was my kind and rather noble boyfriend, who did not say, actually, I didn't sign up for a disabled girlfriend and run away, but stayed on. Anyway, I gradually adjusted to this, very gradually, and later on I began to work for the BBC. There was a national radio program called In Touch for people with vision loss, and I worked for them for a good number of years. And then we moved to the US, and our second child, our second daughter, was born with my congenital cataracts, and this was a terrible shock. We'd been told that this was very unlikely. So anyway, the great healing part of that was I was able to get her all the support and accommodations and extra teaching at school that I had lacked. And so that was the very best thing. Anyway, later on, a bit later, I became a teacher at the Carroll Center for the Blind, teaching cooking, obviously, and all kinds of other home skills. And it became clear to me then what had happened to me, and now I saw happening to our adult students, this was in the very early 2000s, that they had no independent access in the first years really of their vision loss to clear, accurate information about what was the best way to adjust to vision loss, what were the kind of therapies that were good, what wasn't so good, all that. They had no independent access, and I thought this was terrible. And for myself, because you lose a good sense of self and the feeling that you're in charge of your own life, which is really a terrible thing. So anyway, I was sort of tossing around the idea of this book, And then a couple of our senior students, in other words, adult students who were finishing up their courses or getting near the end, came to me and said, you know, we need classes on how to speak. And this probably isn't obvious to you if you haven't thought about it, but this is perfectly true, because speech, spoken communication in general, becomes so different after you can't make eye contact or can't see even whether the person you're trying to talk to is facing your way or is there at all. You have to speak in a different way, more assertive, more speaking up. And so these students came to me and said, we should have classes about this. And in fact, the Carroll Center had previously had classes like this, but they'd been dropped. However, we started again, and they still continue today, and they are called interpersonal skills for the adults, and they're called People Talk in the summer for the teens. So I learned a huge amount from the adult students, the hundreds of groups that I had and classes, and I also conducted about 100 long interviews with adult students who were coming into the interpersonal skills groups to ask them what they thought was most needed, what they lost most seriously after vision loss. And so all this began to kind of build on the idea of writing a book, which I have to tell you at the beginning had been just a little pamphlet, but now it was beginning to be more like a book. And I wrote a draft, and then I wrote a second draft, and so on and so on. And then I started a focus group of students who had been at the Carroll Center who were now a bit further on in their adjustment to vision loss. And there were men and women, people who had different eye conditions, different amounts of vision left, and so on. And I would ask them about a topic like public transport, or hosting at home, or going to a party, or whatever it might be. Public restrooms, boy, that was a hot topic. They would give me all kinds of different opinions, which I would record. And then so gradually, in the end, I retired in order to finally get this book written, which it was, and edited, and in 2019, and then it was published in the summer of 2019. And so, so in the end, I am now, as it were, I grew up with partial sight as a child. Then I lost sight, became legally blind overnight as an adult. Then I became the mother of a partially sighted child, and now adult. And then I became a teacher. And so all these sort of standpoints for understanding vision loss added up to really, I think, a reason for getting a book written, the book I always wanted to write, so that people losing vision, once you get over the first trauma, can read this book and say, okay, now I understand what's happening, or some part of it. And here are the best resources. Here are lots of good ideas about what to do. And then in the later chapters, in the later parts of the book are really all about assertive speech, all about the interpersonal skills that the classes that I gave, all those group classes, well, really facilitated more than gave, were about, and what we learned from them and the focus group. So in the end, really a couple of hundred people, including doctors, therapists, teachers, professionals at the Mass Commission for the Blind, all kinds of people, adult friends in the blindness community, have contributed to make the book what I believe it is, which is a really rich source of information and good ideas for anyone who's dealing with sight loss, either themselves or in their partners, close family or close friends. So I'll put up the next video soon, which will probably be, I'm a little unsure about how best to, what I can cover successfully in the videos, but I think the next one will be about part 1 of the book, which is chapters 1 and 2. So until then, goodbye and very good wishes.